Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. I've got a great deal to get to. A number of geopolitical things here off the top, per usual. A couple of education stories to bring up and a few trends that are up that continue to show, again, the complete downward slide. I have a piece of audio also that I want to play that I think continues to exemplify the brainwashing, in particular among parents, and how they actually feel lost. Even though they continue to send their children into these systems that are hurting them. And then, of course, they're taking the time out of their day to get on the internet and tell everybody that the system is hurting their children. And then at the exact same time, they send their children right back. I can't for the life of me figure it out, but it just exemplifies brainwashing. And then a couple of, again, ridiculous education stories from a couple of teachers who, again, are having sex with children. Both female, as it turns out, both school teachers, and then a Brockton, Massachusetts update, and then some jab-related news as well. I'm also going to have a Substack out probably on Saturday, maybe even Sunday morning if I can swing it, but it's going to be about the sexually transmitted nature of the COVID bioweapon shots. And I've noticed that this is not an article that many people have written. I can't seem to find it anyway on Substack. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. One might, but I haven't found one. And this is a subject that's been rolling around in my head for quite some time because there is a sexually transmitted nature to these shots. There's more than ample evidence that individuals who, again, are jabbed with these bioweapons are transmitting it, not just, I should say this, they're transmitting certainly illness and potentially nanotech that exists within the bloodstream and within seminal fluid and vaginal fluid to individuals who are both jabbed and not jabbed. And as we know, it doesn't even have to be sexually transmitted in order for people to be shed on via electromagnetism. That just being around them, basically, again, in their physical presence is more than enough. And again, I have some updates regarding that specifically a little bit later when I bring up the bioweapon shots again. But either way, let me get into this first. You probably heard and maybe even saw, certainly in the last war video, that Bishop Mari Emanuel was stabbed, and fortunately he was not injured because the Muslim who attacked him in the middle of his service, I believe in Sydney, Australia, if I'm not mistaken. It's either Sydney or Melbourne. I think it's Sydney. But either way, he again was attacked, and I'm glad he's fine. Again, I've watched his sermons before. I greatly respect the man. He's absolutely fantastic and has no limits to his common sense and his love for Jesus Christ. With all of that said, that incident is exactly what I've been talking about on this show for quite some time when it comes to vigilance. I mean, this is a huge issue. And when I saw the attack, I thought a variety of things immediately. Of course, first of all, I hope he's all right. And apparently he is. There's no life-threatening injury that he sustained, which is good. But if you break down that video, what you end up seeing, I think, is a lack of vigilance on the part of the people who were there and their speed to recognize something that seems very suspicious, again, at face value. Now, again, I wasn't there, so it's hard to say what my reaction time would have been, but here's what we know about Australia. And yes, of course, I know that the individuals immediately got out of their seats once the individual started attacking Bishop Emanuel, and then they got on top of him and sat on him until the police showed up. First of all, well, God, I could take this in so many directions. Let me just say this first. We have to stop leaving these people alive. I'm just going to flat out tell you that. We need to stop leaving these assailants and these victimizers alive. No more sitting on them until the police show up. End them right then and there. Snatch the life right out of them. Again, I can't believe that we continue to trust the judicial system. I mean, I would have taken that kid's broken knife and ended him right then and there. And this is, again, the problem with Australia. This is why they are where they are now and have slowly declined into being the communist country that they are. They have no guns. You cannot walk around with a gun. And I'll never forget again, I've told this story numerous times and numerous stories from this particular trip, but when I spoke in Australia at a conference, a guy approached me on the last day that I was there when I was flying back. And we were sitting next to each other at 5 a.m. in the Gold Coast airport. And again, middle-aged Australian guy, and he was going to visit his son in Arkansas. And, nice enough dude, and he was going there to play golf with him and whatever else. And then when we made our way to the Sydney airport, he came up to me at a bar, and he sat down, and he started talking to me again, and he goes, "So you're American?" He goes, "Explain guns to me." He goes, "Why is it that all you guys need guns? And why is it that you feel like you got to walk around with a gun on your hip like it's the Wild West?" He goes, "You don't even have universal health care. You don't even have the socialized health care that we have, and this, that, and the other." And I looked at him, and I just laughed in his face. I said, "Apparently you know nothing about the history of our country." And then, of course, he sort of buckled after that, and he got a sandwich and walked away, and that was kind of the end of it. This right here with Bishop Emmanuel is a perfect example as to why you carry a gun. You can't even carry a knife, from what I understand, in Australia, or that it has to be a certain length. I mean, that's absurd. If I want to walk around with a sword on my back in the uptown area of my town, I should be able to do that. So should anybody. But at the same time, people have the right to defend themselves. So, again, let's break down the situation very quickly. Why is there no security or armed security in that particular church with a well-known bishop who's all over YouTube and has been on numerous podcasts, and his sermons have gone quote-unquote viral, and people have shared them and listened to them, and, he's just a very well-known and a very recognizable individual. So why is there no armed security? Why is it that there's no armed security even close by, like in the front row? And why is it, again, that they're not armed? I know I'm being repetitive on that, but I can't figure it out. This is a lack of vigilance. You can't be in the public eye the way that Bishop Emmanuel is and not have some security around you. Now, it's possible, again, he denies this security. I've seen sermons of his where he openly says, "I can't be hurt. You can't hurt me. I'm protected by Jesus. This is not my home. Heaven is my home." And that's the way that it is. And I fully understand that. And I agree with him on that, as I think most people do. With that said, yes, you can be hurt here. And people can be hurt, and people can be killed, and they do get killed, which brings into account vigilance. We have a responsibility to be vigilant. If someone can walk up to a bishop in the middle of a service and attempt to stab him in the face, which, by the way, if you go back and you watch that video, he doesn't go for his chest or his heart or even his neck. He goes from a top-down swinging motion with what appears to be a spring-loaded knife of some kind, so it didn't work, thank God, but he goes at his face. Again, that's an instant shirt up, gun grab, trigger pull down, and then that person is down on the ground. And then you put a few more into him just for good measure, preferably in the head, just to make sure that, he's not going to survive. But instead, they tackle him. A couple other people get hurt, apparently. And, and then they sit on him until the cops show up. There is a lack of vigilance and a lack of preparedness that is going to get people killed, because it always does, always has. This is the nature of human nature. This is the way that it is. If people are not paying attention to their surroundings, they're going to be hurt and they're going to be taken advantage of. So in the future, when he makes his way back into giving his sermons, I sure hope that there's more security, that security is armed, and that every citizen in Australia uses this moment as a teachable moment and an educatable moment to basically say, we have to do whatever we have to do to make sure that we get guns back in our hands as citizens. so that we can walk around anywhere armed and protect ourselves and those around us. So for anybody in Australia who's too old to understand this, they take your guns so that government can kill you. That's the point. They take your guns as government so that foreigners can kill you. And then government will rule over the foreigners and use them as slaves and then kill them eventually. And then that's it. Then all of these so-called sheep have been slaughtered, and so they think, as far as government is concerned, they get to sit on whatever throne they think exists for them. But people have got to take their power back and stop screwing around. We are at war. These individuals, regardless of their background or religion, are coming after innocent people all of the time. So carry a gun, carry a knife, have everyday carry defense tools on you on a day in and day out basis. Keep your children close to you when you're out in public, because there are knife wielding psychos that are out there. Some of them are sand wizards. Some of them are, Africans, whatever they are. They tend not to be white people, though. I'm not saying that they can't be. They certainly can. But people need to pay attention to the fact that this is happening with more regularity. This is not an accident. This has been planned this way. So again, my prayers to Bishop Emmanuel and everybody involved. But you've got to change things. We can't be these, we can't be monks in a war and walk around acting as if we can't be hurt in this meat sack of a body that we've all been given. I mean, we can. And that's happening. So we have the right and responsibility to protect ourselves and even strangers around us who are being victimized. But for God's sakes, if you give up your guns and you give up your rights, then you have none. You have nothing to defend yourself with. Certainly not in a form of a tool. But again, you can't even defend the people around you who are being victimized. So people have got to wake up to this. This is going to increase certainly this year. This is not going to slow down. So with that said, there was also this. I didn't put this video in the war video, although I probably should have. It was making the rounds the other day, again, on the internet, and I found it to be horrific, but also, again, really ignorant from a Vigilance standpoint, and this one even involved a gun in the hands of a good guy. So let me read the headline here, and then I'll get into what the video shows. This is from the Fayetteville Observer, and it was titled, "Fayetteville Man Struck and Killed While Attempting to Stop Carjacker in Lumberton." This was in North Carolina, and I believe North Carolina, and it says, a man was arrested Thursday after a Good Samaritan from Fayetteville was struck and killed attempting to stop a carjacking in Lumberton. Ricky Alex Driggers, 28, is charged with first-degree murder, larceny of a motor vehicle, fleeing and eluding arrest, and 2 counts of attempted common-law robbery in the incident that resulted in the death of Jonathan Adam LeCompte, 38 years old, according to a news release from the Lumberton Police Department. So here's what happened. It looked as if this was basically in I would say a McDonald's parking lot, it looked like. And this individual who lost his life, this Jonathan Adam LeCompte, he comes up to what looks like a city truck. Okay, like, again, what city workers would drive, and he himself looks like a city worker, and he's wearing the yellow vest. And it looks like either his truck or someone else's truck that maybe he works with is being carjacked. So someone is in the driver's seat, and LeCompte starts shooting at this guy with his concealed carry pistol through the window, through the driver's side window, and shooting at him. Doesn't appear to hit him. And who knows, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but you can't tell. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, like, when you watch the video at first, you're going, who is who in this situation and what's happening? He starts shooting at him, again, at the carjacker. The carjacker then puts the truck in reverse, backs it all the way up rather quickly. And Jonathan LeCompte, again, is, after shooting at him, is still standing there in the parking lot. And he's a big guy. So he's not quick. He's not fast. Again, rest his soul. But he wasn't fast. And then out of, again, seemingly nowhere, the same truck that just got carjacked just puts the truck back in drive and then floors it and hits him and hits LeCompte, throwing his massive body into the air, at least 100 feet, I'd say. He flies through the air, lands on the ground, probably gets rolled over one more time, and then the truck goes out into this giant field, and then it hits something else, and then it stops, and people are screaming, and people are taping it, and people are running after the driver, and they're attempting to help LeCompte, who's on the ground. It's a rather horrific video, but either way, again, not to. I'm certainly not criticizing The Departed here. I'm simply saying that in a moment like that, if you're going to draw your gun on an individual, you'd better shoot to kill. I mean, you shouldn't be putting warning shots in the air, or certainly if you're getting carjacked. I mean, you should shoot to kill. Again, if you're going to draw your gun in that manner. With that said, if an individual's behind the wheel of a car, you'd better find shelter real quick or get behind an object that the actual automobile, is going to hit first instead of you. But again, he puts rounds into the driver's side window of this truck, and then he just kind of stands there as the truck reverses itself. And he doesn't really move. He's just still kind of standing there. And then he's looking in the opposite direction instead of keeping his eyes on the truck. And then, of course, like I said, once the truck was in drive and the pedal was to the floor, there was no running away from it. So again, I don't know what else to say other than individuals, again, it's turning more and more into the Wild West to some extent, but people have got to use their heads. They just have to. Again, if an individual is behind the wheel of a car and they steal it, there's nothing keeping them from using the automobile as a weapon, which clearly they did in this case. But again, if you pull your gun, you've got to be prepared to use it. If you're going to pull your gun and point it in a direction and you're going to pull the trigger, you'd better shoot to kill. So, I don't know. I speak about it, I think with regularity on the show here, certainly within the last few years. But people have got to be a little more vigilant and understand their surroundings as best as possible. So that's my 2 cents on that. Let me see here. A few government-related things just very quickly. I have no doubt that there is a continuity of government that exists in our country. I'm certain that is the case. I'm certain that the Insurrection Act has been signed. In fact, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show, but believe it or not, I can't even believe I'm saying this. I caught a few minutes of the Don Lemon show, and it was awful, as you might expect. And he was talking a while back with Representative Adam Kinzinger, who, of course, is a complete piece of trash and a traitor to our country and should be hung by the neck until dead. Either way, there was almost an open admission and an actual discussion between the two of them of Trump signing the Insurrection Act and what that actually means. In fact, I took it as a full-blown admission. Now, I've talked about it before. I have no doubt he signed it, which means the military is in charge. And again, what fraction of the military is actually in charge? It has to be a select group of individuals. Again, not the TV military that we see, and certainly not the TikTok video military that we see, and probably not even the commercial creators, for the U.S. Army and the Marines and whatever else, in order to recruit individuals into being in the military. It's probably not those individuals. Those individuals are going about their daily routines as if everything is just normal, when clearly things are not. So, with him signing the Insurrection Act back in 2021, which I'm certain he did, and then, of course, Don Lemon and Adam Kinzinger talking about it and what that actually means, and even Adam Kinzinger alluded to the fact that it's lawful. He goes, now look, it's legal. He goes, it's legal, but, I just don't think that people understand what that means. And the fact is we do know what it means. It means that you've been running a charade and engaging in treason and sedition this entire time in an effort to have Donald Trump thrown in prison, executed for something, or assassinated in some form or fashion. So again, I have no doubt that there's a continuity of government going on. Endless executive orders have been signed. The law of war manual is in play. And I've criticized this individual before, but I've only criticized them because they go after people who have numerous shows and have numerous discussions. And again, he sort of thinks he's holier than thou. But at the exact same time, he certainly serves a purpose. I don't think, this individual, of course, is Derek Johnson. And during this whole Middle East war stuff, if one is even taking place, I would certainly recommend that people, again, get on his Telegram channel, which is Rattletrap1776, and just take a look at what he's taking a look at. And just sort of briefly pay attention, if not more in-depth, pay attention to what it is that he's looking at. I mean, he's following planes, he's connecting it with executive orders and U.S. codes that exist, and certainly federal law, and a number of other things. And it's almost too complex for me. But even so, he still has a way about him, which I think is slightly unfortunate, but he has a way about him where he tries to communicate in a way that makes it sound like everybody should just know what he knows. And at the exact same time, he's not very specific about certain things. I mean, he'll show pictures of military planes from foreign countries landing, for example, in Chicago, or landing in particular cities in the United States, but he doesn't explain why that's the case. I have no doubt, again, that there's a lot of suspicious moves going on. I mean, there's lots of planes going to Gitmo. There certainly are. And he tracks these, and you can actually see this live. But at the same time, further explanation would be nice, because that's what people, again, are really interested in hearing. With all of that said, I think it's pretty obvious that we have no business trusting the media whatsoever regarding anything. And we certainly have no business trusting anybody who we see come up to a lectern, certainly at a press briefing in the so-called White House, and trying to tell the American public what's really happening and what's going on. They're just constantly gaslighting people. And again, they're robbing the American taxpayer on a day in and day out basis, and we know that. But again, with a continuity of government, of course, and the Insurrection Act being signed, that just means that everything that Joe Biden has signed, is doing, and is putting into place is not real. That all of it is null and void. That would mean a FISA vote. Like, again, that was voted on again out of the House of Representatives, and something like 116 or 117 congressmen voted for it who are Republican. Congressmen and women. So again, the FBI sells the whole FISA thing as being a security thing for Americans, when in fact we know that's not true. It's our own government having the ability to spy on us whenever they want, and then falsify documents, and then, of course, not need a search warrant and 1,000 other things. So, again, if there really is a continuity of government and the Insurrection Act has been signed, then that would imply that that's not real, that vote isn't real. That Jackson being on the Supreme Court, the female, again, is not real, because that was Biden's only Supreme Court pick and confirmation, so she should be removed. Same thing with, again, any position that Joe Biden has put in place, anybody that he has so-called hired, and whatever it may be. Again, I don't claim to know all the ins and outs, and I'm certainly not going to do that. But I do know that much. That if the Insurrection Act has been signed, then that means that the military is in charge, that Donald Trump is still the commander-in-chief, and that Joe Biden is just basically a criminal walking around aimlessly hiring God knows who to do God knows what job. And that's all because there was a real insurrection, but it wasn't the January 6th nonsense. It was, of course, because of the 2020 stolen election. Which then I think brings me to this. And again, I haven't been keeping a lot of tabs on this, frankly, but I do have one particular opinion regarding the whole Trump trial that's taking place now, where he, of course, has to be in court for X amount of days, or certainly throughout the course of his trial. There's the whole story about how he's going to miss his son's graduation, his son's high school graduation. I simply said on Gab, I said, why doesn't Barron Trump not go to his high school graduation and just skip it because graduations are stupid? Why doesn't he should just go to his dad's trial? You talk about, again, throwing the media into a complete panic and showing the American people what's more important, walking during a graduation after high school, or actually, showing up at your own dad's fake trial where he's being persecuted for absolutely nothing. And then, just throwing them into a total tailspin and reminding the American public that school is not that important and that family matters. I think that would be a really cool move. In fact, if Melania showed up too, why not? Have the whole family show up. Have them all sit in there all day long. Either way, that's what I would do. But then again, it brings into question whether or not there's even a security threat toward Donald Trump, which we know that there are numerous security threats regarding him. They've tried to kill him numerous times, dating back to, of course, before he was president, and then as president, and then certainly after. We know for a fact they've tried to do it at least half a dozen times. I've seen individuals discuss upwards of 30 times they've tried to kill him. But either way, maybe he's not going to the graduation, and this was one of the theories that was bouncing around. He's purposefully not going to his son's graduation and using the trial as not an excuse, but even that the trial is a bit of a put on, and that the trial itself is a reason for him to not go to his son's graduation, because maybe they know that there's a security threat regarding that building, and maybe them not being able to provide the kind of security that they need. Because again, if Donald Trump is sitting in the audience during his son's graduation, that might put him in danger. It might put a lot of people in danger. So again, I don't know what's taking place regarding all of it, but it seems like interesting timing, and it certainly seems like a nice way to get out of a particular event, in particular, again, if there's a security threat involved. So there you go. That's kind of my 2 cents on some of the things that are happening right now. Again, I'm not even going to pretend to understand what's going on overseas. I'm just not going to. It's very difficult to listen to anybody on television bring up Israel and bring up Iran and bring up this and bring up that. What we do know from a historic standpoint regarding all of this is that Iran typically isn't involved in wars. I'm not saying I support them. I don't. They're not big on Christianity. They have their own thing, but they are in a insulated and self-reliant country for the most part. Again, over the course of history, certainly world history, it's those countries that certainly the bankers and the Jewish lobby want to go after. And they want to end them because they want control of them. They want what flows underneath their feet, i.e. oil. They want to have more influence over their banks, or just take over their banks. And then, of course, they control their finances. And when you control the finances, then you control the property. Control the property, you control the people, you control the ins and outs and the trade and the commerce and the whole thing. So, again, I'm not even going to pretend to know what's going on, but what I do know is this. I don't think that the trip that Donald Trump made when he got into office, going around the world and meeting with world leaders, was an accident. It's quite possible that that was one of the beginning phases of this entire war, and that he was going from country to country basically saying, you're either with us or you're against us, and here's what we're going to do. I just feel like alliances were made during that time. And again, there have been numerous videos out there describing all of this, and I've even linked some of them in the descriptions below of this show, but there seems to be past ample evidence that that's the case. So I'll just leave it at there. Again, It's one of these things that I think is certainly interesting. It's remarkably complex, and like I said, I'm not a fool, but I'm not going to pretend to know everything about it. Because there's no way that I don't think we're supposed to. We're certainly not supposed to know. What we are supposed to know is that you have no business trusting the media, and that you have no business watching TV and turning on Fox News and listening to all of these TV generals act like they know what's going on. They don't have a flippin' clue. They don't have a clue. So lots of people are being manipulated on the whole thing, which is usually a pretty good indication that it's not a bad idea to just kind of stay quiet about it, maybe pay attention to what some people are posting and what they're not posting, and then just kind of let the chips fall where they fall. So, yeah. Again, if it's a real serious operation, which I'm sure there are multiple operations taking place, we're never going to find out. I don't think we're ever really going to find out all of the ins and outs. So there you go. Okay, education stuff. This was thrown my way the other day by Jesse James. There is a video making the rounds of Ethan Crumbley once Ethan Crumbley was detained by police. So we're talking badge cam footage and then security cam footage. And basically in the video, which is just over a minute long, and it's numerous sort of clips all thrown together, Ethan Crumbley sounds possessed after he shot the students and, of course, was arrested. He's yelling out loud that he's sorry, that he didn't want to do it. He says a number of other things like, "Why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you stop me?" Which again was indicative in the entire Guidepost report, because it was beyond evident that this kid wanted to get caught, that he wanted somebody to stop him and figure out what he was doing before he was going to do it. But the incompetence that was around him from an adult standpoint was beyond evident. Again, yes, his parents, but his parents didn't break any law. Same thing with the school employees. Again, the school employees, they shouldn't be working there anymore at the very least, but they were equally as responsible for not paying attention to his frame of mind. And again, as I've said before, and as you know, schools are in the business of excuse making. This is what they do. Image protection is their number one thing, and everybody's fine, and everybody can go back to class, and they think they can talk everybody off the ledge and 1,000 other things. But with that video aside for a minute, unfortunately, ABC News of all outlets has put together a documentary titled "Sins of the Parents: The Crumbley Trials." You talk about propaganda and evil propaganda at its absolute worst. This is certainly it. So again, premiering April 18th on Hulu, documents and convictions of the parents of the Oxford High School shooter. It's just going to be the worst form of evil propaganda you can possibly imagine. Because again, they're painting the parents as being negligent parents, as being responsible for this happening. And I'm sure that in the documentary they'll mention the school once. But what they're not going to do, of course, is bring up all of the ins and outs of the mother's trial, and how, again, the parents didn't break a single law. Not one. But when you're a government official legally responsible for the protection of thousands of children on a day in and day out basis as a school employee, there are numerous policies, procedures, and even laws that you have to follow, many of which were broken, as we know. So this documentary didn't take long for them to make, because again, this is the gaslighting of the American public. This is what they're trying to do. They have to consistently take a shot over the bow of all parents across the country in order to shame you into giving up your guns. Because if you don't give up your guns, well, this could be you. You could find yourself in jail before your trial for a number of years. You could be wearing an orange jumpsuit and be shackled around the waist. You could be pulled in and out of court on a constant basis, end up broke, homeless, and 1,000 other things, and then doing 10 to 15 in prison for something that you had nothing to do with. It's just, again, it blows me away. But this is just more, it should be more proof to the American public that government hates you, that law enforcement by and large hates you, that the judicial system hates you. They're not doing this because they like us. They're doing it because, again, they want people to be guilt-tripped into giving up their weapons. for self-defense. They want you to not want a Second Amendment. That if all of a sudden we're all gun-free, that all our problems will just go away. It's the most asinine explanation I've ever heard. But Bill Cooper wrote about this extensively, spoke about it extensively. He said they will use real and fake school shootings to take your guns. They'll shame people into giving up their own guns because they feel like if they give them up, then they're better people somehow. It's ridiculous. So there you go. I'm not going to be watching that documentary because it's, it's evil propaganda and it's filled with lies. I saw the mother's trial. I saw all of it. And of course, brought it to everybody's attention here on the show and highlighted the inconsistencies and where the focus was and where the focus was not, and a number of other things, but remarkably disturbing. But this right here is the cleanup. I mean, this is their, this is their final move that they have to make after something like this, is throw together a quick documentary so that everybody, reflects on Sandy Hook and reflects on Uvalde in Nashville. And I'm sure they have a line in the documentary that says something like, since the days of Columbine, and this is what our country is coming to, is that this is becoming all too common, and all those other cliche phrases and lines that they use. It's disgusting. Anyway, okay. Let's talk about the collapse of education briefly. I'm just going to mention these two stories very quickly. Both came from The Blaze. An Oklahoma substitute teacher sexually assaulted a male student, and was having a sexual relationship with them. It was a 45-year-old woman, and let me see, and she was actually related to a high-ranking government official. So that's interesting. And they were actually caught in a car, if memory serves, doing the deed. And there you go. Someone called 911 and was like, this seems suspicious. And then there you go. Police showed up, arrested the woman. The kid put on his clothes, ran away from the scene. I think they eventually caught him, I'm sure. But there you go. So there was that. There was another one again where a New Jersey teacher sexually assaulted another student, and they were also caught having sex in a car in a national park. So, good times. I mean, honest to God. Both female teachers happening on a constant basis. Yeah, in American education, it's just called a Wednesday. That's basically what that is. But again, think of all of the situations like that and the sexual assaults that take place that never get caught or even get hidden by the school district themselves. Happens all of the time, ladies and gentlemen. All of the time. Okay. There was also this. This was sent my way from a local friend of mine, and this has to do with the University of Indiana. And let me just read this here for you. This basically, just to summarize it very quickly, this is a way, and this right here is, again, indicative of the collapse, because we know all the measures and all of the steps that American education takes in order to not just lower standards, but try to convince individuals who are already in the business, who might not be licensed teachers, to actually become a licensed educator. Now again, why would they be doing that? Why are they recruiting from within among their own employees? Well, they're doing it because they're losing their own employees. Their employees are sick from the COVID shots. They're dead from the COVID shots. Sane and sound people don't want to be American school teachers anymore. Teacher education programs at the university and college level are drying up like nobody's business. I mean, it's a dry well. And as I've said before, the well has caved in. There is no well anymore. It's over. So they have to recruit from within now. You have to try to get all of the quote-unquote non-teaching staff, specifically in this case, paraprofessionals, even though paraprofessionals do a great deal of teaching in the school environment, and I know that. But what they're doing here is they're trying to get them to be actual licensed educators. So this was a Facebook post from Indiana University East School of Education, and it says the IU East School of Education recognizes the important role paraprofessionals play in the education of K-12 students in our region. They should be celebrated and recognized. It is with this in mind that we create a pathway for full-time paras to earn their license. There are 2 upcoming informational sessions. Feel free to attend either in person or through Zoom. Please share this with individuals who might be interested. Now, before I read the little post here of the actual meeting itself, which is taking place in person on Wednesday, the 17th, and then the Zoom one is taking place Thursday, April 18th. Indiana University and their School of Education couldn't give 2 shits about paraprofessionals. Let's just call it out the way that it is. They don't give a damn about them. So what are they doing to recruit them? To solve their own problems that they themselves created as a school of education. They lick their backside, they kiss their boots, or vice versa, and then they feed them a compliment. This is what's referred to as a shit sandwich. You feed them a compliment, and then you give them the business of what you're offering them in the middle, and then, of course, you end with another compliment. We're going to make this convenient for you, because, again, don't forget that we've always known that you're there, and you've always had a voice, and we've always been watching and caring about you because we care about you greatly. Indiana University doesn't give a damn about paraprofessionals. They just don't. They really don't. They've never had anything to do with them until now. And now, frankly, they're using them. This is all being done in an effort to manipulate them and use them. And like I said, increase their own enrollment so that Indiana University can get a little piece of the pie as much as they can to keep themselves afloat. And then at the exact same time, make an attempt to fill their schools with paraprofessionals to take up the slack, so to speak, that exists with a failing and dwindling teacher population. Again, I almost don't have the words. These people are so stupid they've done this to themselves and they have no idea why. Not a clue. They're completely out to lunch on this. Here's what the memo says. It says, quote, "Are you a paraprofessional wanting to earn a teacher's license? Indiana University East has a program of study that will allow paraprofessionals to pursue their licenses while working in their current school system. If you would like to learn more, please attend one of the information sessions listed below." And then in-person meeting is Wednesday, April 17th of 2024 at 4 p.m. in the Tom Raper Hall, room 124. And then the Zoom call is on Thursday, April 18th at 4 p.m. on Zoom. And there's the Zoom address. It says it is also now possible for paraprofessionals to count the hours that you are working toward your field experience requirements in classes at IU East. And then it says, quote, in all bold letters, "We know you have a heart for children. Now there is a path for you to take the next step." And of course, what's the carrot that they're dangling out in front of everybody? It's not just licensure. It's not just take a few of our classes and you can even take them online and we'll make them as convenient for you as humanly possible. Yes, you'll have to pay because nothing is free. But at the exact same time, the ultimate carrot is a teacher's salary. That you're going from being a paraprofessional to having a teacher's salary, as if to say, hey, look, we know you're in the building 5 days a week as long as teachers are. Why not make as much money as them? Again, that's sort of the face value carrot that they're feeding everybody. What we know is really happening behind the scenes is they're saying, oh my God, we're losing teachers rapidly. What do we do? What do we actually do to fill this gap? And we know what they're doing. They're changing all of the parameters that were once in place for licensed teachers to become licensed educators regarding the degrees that they had to have, and then, of course, the tests that they had to take, and 1,000 other things. And then they're finding backdoor ways in order to change that, essentially, but still get the result that they think that they're going to get if they do it this way. It won't work. It just won't. They can't even find substitute teachers, for God's sakes. They can't even find bus drivers. They can't find food service workers. They're leaving on a constant basis for all of the reasons I've brought up here, too. It's all of again, it's just the same bag of reasons. And a lot of it does really have to do with the fact that it's child abuse. You're talking about a moral dilemma here. A lot of individuals left the business over the last 4 years because of the moral dilemma and the lack of morality and the lack of values. There are none in this business anymore. Zero. It's over. They've shown everybody what they're capable of doing and how they'll all do it with one another in lockstep, regardless of what everybody else is doing or any other information that is presented to them that is counter to the very narrative and the whole storyline that they're going along with. Again, they all do the exact same thing. But they don't ever want to admit that it's a real moral dilemma, that people are saying to themselves, wait a minute, this isn't right anymore. It was never right to begin with, but even being in the business isn't right anymore for a variety of reasons. And that to even want to be in the business now, that it comes with its own stigma that is so not good and just morally bankrupt that you really have to check the wavelength and the brain capacity and the IQ of the individual who really wants to, again, continue to exist in this business, let alone go right into it as a brand new, fresh college student out of the gate. Again, how many people these days, I've asked this before, but how many people are actually graduating from high school and going, you know what, I want to be a school teacher. I want to go to college and I want to go to a teacher education program and then learn how to be an educator and then student teach and then get right back in the classroom. There was a time when people wanted to do that, and unfortunately, they didn't all want to do it for the right reasons. I put myself in the category of wanting to do it for the right reasons. I wanted to change things on the inside to make it not complicated, not bureaucratic, and save and protect children essentially from the bullshit. That's why I became a school teacher. That was the whole motive. But you have to question someone's motive today, because almost by default that person has to be completely brainwashed. Let me give you another example. It ties right in, I think. I just saw this the other day. I think it was at least 4 days ago. I meant to mention it on the last show, but I'll get to it now. Brockton, Massachusetts, which of course I've brought up before, certainly in the past, and all of their financial woes and violence problems. And again, you talk about a sinking ship. It really is interesting because then you get to see all the moves that they make and all of the decisions that they're making and whether or not they're actually learning anything. And as it turns out, they're not learning a thing. So one of their board members has resigned. This is a white woman by the name of Kathy Ellers. And she allegedly, she resigned in the middle of her term. And I believe it's the end of March is when she resigned. And so she's taking a job somewhere else in Vermont, which is her excuse to basically leave the school board. Again, the timing is interesting, not to mention looking for another job in the middle of the school district's financial collapse that you, of course, are a part of. But at the exact same time, again, I don't know any nefarious background on her part regarding anything, but she's gone. And so what they did is the school committee and the city council tend to work hand in hand in this town, which is usually not a good idea, but this is what they do from time to time. Certainly when a member of a school board just up and resigns. At least it works this way in this particular town. So what they did is they held a special session, a joint session between council and the school committee or school board, and they voted in a candidate to take her place temporarily until the 2024 election. And there were, I think, 4 or 5 candidates. One of them didn't show up, and then the other 4 showed up, and they gave a brief speech at the beginning. And then they voted as a school and a city council committee, again, as a joint committee in this particular case, and they voted in an individual. Now, I want to describe these people first, because the people running for this position on the school board, as a member of the school board, it was fascinating. The first woman who shows up is a black woman. She introduces herself and she says, "My pronouns are her and hers." I mean, honest to shit. Right out of the gate, you're an idiot. Right out of the gate, you just told everybody you're an idiot. When I see the pronoun thing or I hear the pronoun thing, At the beginning of anybody describing themselves, I instantly think they're certifiable. Immediately. So you're instantly not qualified for the position. She goes through her experience. She says, well, I was a school teacher and now I'm a social worker or something along those lines. She's deeply embedded in social work and this, that, and the other. And you can just tell that the crowd isn't buying it, that people are just going, ugh, no way. The next guy who comes up and speaks, I would say is sort of the very milquetoast bland option. The guy's last name was O'Malley, white guy. He shows up, says, I've been in education. I grew up in Brockton. I went to Brockton Public Schools. I did this, I did that. He's a lifer. He's been there his whole life. He'll never leave. And he's running for this school board position that's now vacant. And then the next person who gets up is again an individual who is, or I should say, has been a lifer in the field of education. He's taught and administrated every grade level that you could possibly imagine. He's a Black Hispanic guy, and he gives out his credentials, and he's a fast talker, and you can immediately tell that he's fast talking a little bit more than anybody else. But he's certainly one of the more serious candidates, even though again it's not going to matter who takes that particular position, because again it's a sinking ship and it doesn't matter. But then the last guy was a gentleman who has spoken at the school committees before during the public comments section. And you can tell that this guy actually cares. I mean, this last guy actually cares. He's a tutor for a number of students. He's this huge black dude. And you can just tell that, I mean, he really does care. I didn't think he stood a chance either, but as it turned out, when they took their first vote, they were basically voting away 3 of the 5 candidates, essentially. So the one who didn't show up, of course, she didn't get any votes. And then the first woman who went, she got 0 votes. Old hers, or whatever, her and herself, or her pronouns, or whatever the hell she said. She didn't get a single vote. Again, that right there I thought was hilarious. I was laughing out loud. I thought, well, of course you didn't. Not everybody in the room is stupid. I mean, they're all dumb, but, at least they saw through your charade. The O'Malley guy got 1 vote, and then the other 2 guys got 9 votes and 7 votes. The 9 votes were set for the education lifer guy, who's had 27 years, taught every grade level, administrated every grade level, whatever else. The fast talker. He got the 9 votes, and then the tutor, who's the big black guy, he ends up getting 7 votes. And then they said, we need 10 votes to make it a majority in order to make the position one of these individuals. So they went around the horn again, and they voted, and they ended up picking up 1 more vote for the education lifer guy. So now he's on the school board now, and that's it. And again, what's interesting is that the school board itself, by and large, the actual members themselves got to vote also on these candidates, and they seemed relatively split as to which of the last 2 candidates that they wanted, which shows you all the division that exists on their school board. I mean, it's immense. But I don't know. It's just beyond embarrassing. But I just wanted to let you know that in some parts of the United States, that's how it works with school board candidates. If it doesn't work that way, almost all places, there might be a joint meeting, or it might just be a meeting just within the school board itself where candidates go up and then the school board themselves get to vote, or sometimes it's the Chamber of Commerce that is a part of it. Sometimes it's county commissioner's office is responsible for having a backup vote for a school board member who's left, and then they need to fill the vacant position, whatever it may be. But there you go. Kind of a long-winded explanation, but there you go. Okay. With them aside, let me play this audio for you. This right here again, I think, exemplifies the brainwashing, in particular among the parents. This is a parent in Kentucky with children describing her children's experience and her experience with the school that she sends her children to, specifically having to do with dental checkups and nurse overreach, and school policy. Now, just to remind everybody, Vanessa Hurst, when she was on the show a number of times, certainly throughout 2021 and 2022, she brought this very thing up and things like this out of the state of Kentucky. That the giant stack of forms that kids go home with on the first day of school, when you sign off on those as a parent and you don't read the fine print, you're signing away your child's medical rights and your rights as their parent to be the overseer of any medical treatment that they receive. You're giving it to the school. In fact, Vanessa Hurst wrote a Substack article on theamericanclassroom.substack.com about this very thing. Again, specifically having to do with vaccination. Now, it had to do with a lot of medical things, but vaccination, of course, was a big part of that. So if you want to go over and read that, I highly recommend it. But regarding this audio, I want to play again. This is a Kentucky mother. She's on TikTok talking about this. The video's been making the rounds a little bit. I put it up on Gab. And you're going to hear it in her tone. And you're going to hear, of course, the story very quickly, but then you're going to hear how she's completely lost. That she just has no idea what she can possibly do. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
So where are all of my parents that have kids in grade school, like 1st through 5th grade? Because I have a question for you. Down here in southeastern Kentucky, they offer programs for children who don't have access to health care, especially for like dental work. And they sent a consent form home saying that they were selecting the grades and that your kid could get a free cleaning done for the service that they offer. They have a dentist come out on this big tour bus and they do the free cleanings. And I was like, okay, whatever. Well, they sent home a piece of paper in the mail saying that my kids, both of my kids who are in 1st grade, have abnormalities and that I would have to consent for them to do further treatment. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, my kids go to the dentist on a regular basis, like every 6 months to a year. Like, there's never no cavities, decaying. Their baby teeth are coming out, so their teeth are loose, but that's it. So I call the school. They tell me we have no control over that. You have to wait until the dentist call you. This lady calls me and she's going over the stuff that's wrong. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense how my kids' teeth, like from the last 6 months, are suddenly decaying and that they're going to need root canals and like all this kind of crap. Well, then she's like, well, we're going to send home consent forms. I just need you to sign it, put your insurance on it. And she was like, once the procedures are done, she's like, it's going to be done over a consecutive amount of days. But she was like, your kids are going to have to miss school for this, and we're going to have to put them under that laughing gas anesthesia. But you are not allowed to be there. We'll just call you whenever it's time to pick them up. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm going to contact their dentist because this does not seem right. They have an appointment literally in like 2 months. Like, I'm going to get this taken care of. Take my kids to the dentist. Nothing is wrong with my children. They both have baby teeth that they're losing, but there's no sign of cavities, no signs of decaying, nothing. The dentist showed me the scans. So tell me why a couple days ago, I get a call back from that school dentist telling me, oh, well, we understand that we didn't get your consent form, but your child is scheduled for a surgery for this, and this day. And then your other child is going to be on this, and this day, so we can separate it up in weeks. And she was like, we're just going to go ahead and do it since you already signed the first cleaning consent form. And then we'll call you and let you know. And I said, no, you're not touching my kids. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, don't you care about the priority of your kids? Because it looks like your kids never brush their teeth. And I was like, ma'am, I just took my kids to their dentist and they had a clean bill of health. I asked to see the records. I asked to see where they, the exams of the teeth decaying and cavities. They refused to show me anything. But she was so concerned with it. She was like, all we need is your insurance information. But she was like, we are going to have to put your kids asleep and they are going to miss this amount of school. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm not opting into anything. You're not touching my kids. So tell me why I get a letter sent home to me from the school board telling me that the days that the dentist had my kids scheduled, if they missed that amount of days, my kids would be in truancy and I would have to go to court. Like, somebody make it make sense. Like, I'm not understanding. I feel like that dentist was just trying to rack up on my insurance and trying to put my kids through unnecessary like dental work, and especially putting them to sleep knowing that I'm not allowed to be there. Like, I've never even been allowed to talk to the dentist. So can somebody make this make sense? Like, am I hallucinating, or what would you do?
Instead of criticizing the parent, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to do, again, basically what libs of TikTok can't do and what Chris Rufo can't do and won't do, because they apparently don't know and they don't want to share any real information with people. They just want to show videos like this. In fact, this video came from libs of TikTok's Twitter account or X account. Either way, let's help this individual. First of all, there's a variety of reasons as to why this is happening. Let's talk about the big picture first. It's government control. It's government control over the parent and controlling the children and the decision-making that parents have over their children and trying to convince the parents that the parents are wrong and that government is right. That's number one. You're the dummy as the parent. School and government know better than you do. Listen to us when we call you and tell you about a particular thing regarding your children's medical status, in this particular case, their dental hygiene. And then you need to do what we tell you to do because, well, we're government. That's the big picture. More specifically, the medical industry making inroads in American education has been happening, and 2020 was the green flag go. I've been over that at length. The COVID lie and the pandemic lie and the scare tactics were the green light go and green flag go for getting parents to trust the education system. That we're doing all of this for the betterment of your children, and please trust us because this is the way that it needs to be. And yes, it's an inconvenient truth, but this is just the way that it has to be, so trust us. That's when they started to rework all of their codes of conduct as a building, all their consent forms, all their legal forms, you name it. If there's a signature on a form, it's a legal document. If that signature is the parent, and they don't read the fine print, and it says again that medical interventions can take place, then they can take place without the parent's consent. What will sometimes happen, like in this case, is a nurse or a school dentist, which again, that right there never used to be a thing, but that's becoming a thing, or dentists that work closely with schools on particular things, is they will basically contact the parents sort of in a last-ditch effort to basically say, okay, so here's what we saw, here's what we want to do. You don't have to have us do it, but we highly recommend you doing it. It's coercion again, essentially. It's just another form of coercion. There's a third avenue with this, which is all about money. Schools are losing money. And one of the ways that they think that they can get money back is by partnering with the medical industry to intervene on children and then take advantage of those children and those parents in the school environment so that the school environment itself can bill the insurance companies, and then that insurance kickback comes back to the school district, and now all of a sudden, your average American K-12 school at the public or private or charter school level is also operating like a doctor's office or a hospital. It's about cash. They need it because they're going broke. So they have to find money some other place. Now make it make sense. And what should she do? Simple. You can't send your children back there anymore. I should say this too on top of it, before I even get to that. This has to do with also government intervention to get CPS to show up, which she alluded to. That if your children miss a certain amount of days because they're going to your dentist instead of our school dentist, so to speak, then they could be counted as truant if they miss a certain amount of days, and then of course you have to go to court for being a negligent parent. This is where you should not trust not only government but even the judicial system. This is where the judicial system will come down on parents like you can't possibly imagine. And then you get a knock on the door and your kids get taken from you. under the guise, of course, and certainly the accusation of you being a negligent parent because, well, the school said so. And then they start to put together dossiers on individual parents and individual families and their own children behind all of their backs. And then they build these cases against these families, parents, and kids. They present it to CPS, and then it's game over. This is what happens when you play government games. You get government prizes, and their prizes suck. They've always sucked. But this is what they're doing, and this is what they want. Now, again, to answer her last question, make it make sense, what should she do? It's painfully obvious what she should do. I even put this video on Gab, and somebody in bold letters responded back and said, not everybody can homeschool their kids. Not everybody can do that. A lot of mothers have to work these days, and it's not Little House on the Prairie anymore. Okay. To that I say, then you need to rework your life. You need to get your entire lifestyle changed. You need to change things then. You need to change the way you teach your children. You need to change the way that you spend the time with them that you do. You need to teach them particular things that you're clearly not teaching them. Again, how to behave inside of a house, how to stay home. Yes, I understand they're in first grade, as she said. It's a difficult age to keep a first grader at home by themselves. I fully get it. I fully understand. But they have to find something else to do. They have to find another way. Now, again, she has a wedding ring on, based on the video. She has an engagement ring on. She clearly has a significant other to some extent, so I would assume. But again, they need to work things out as a family. They need to figure out how to do things differently. Anything is better than sending your children to an American K-12 school, certainly in a situation like that, where the mother has enough energy to make a post like that on the internet describing what's really going on, and there's no reason to say she's lying. Again, there's ample evidence to indicate that she's telling the truth. So she's not being disingenuous with her post. It's just the energy that she's putting into the post is misplaced energy. She could very well, again, although she's asking for help, so it seems, but she should take that energy and put it into researching homeschooling programs for your children. Teaching them how to read and write has got to be priority number one. That's a daily activity all of the time. And once they do it, they won't stop. They'll just keep doing it. You have to teach them to read and write out of the gate. And then the earlier they can do that, well, the earlier they can do just about anything, which is great. So that's the solution. Again, people have walked away from their jobs, they've moved, they've sold their belongings, they've reworked their entire families to get away from the grip of government. If one family can do it, anybody can do it. If one family where both parents are working can do it, or even, again, if a single parent is in this particular situation, and again, I understand it's totally hard, yes, you probably have to reach out for help. You have to reach out to someone else, whether it be a family member if you have one, or a trusted friend, or someone else, in order to get your children out of these systems. But I understand it's not the same for everybody. I fully get it. I'm not an idiot. I mean, I understand. But this is where family planning comes into play. This is what family planning means. And I understand that there's unfortunate circumstances that people can't predict that happen all the time that impact the plans that a family has set up for themselves, that throw a monkey wrench into the entire operation. I fully get that too. But to consistently send your children back to these abusive environments where they have no problem engaging in a medical procedure with or without the consent of a parent, this is the direction it's heading in, because this is where it is. It's been this way for years, but it continues to be this way, and it's getting worse. So make it make sense, AmericanEducationFM.com. That individual needs to go over there, click on the education tab. You know, they'll never hear this, unfortunately, which, again, is unfortunate, but this is where they need to go for extra help, and it's one of many places. Again, click on the education tab, look at the homeschooling resources, and figure this out, and understand the larger umbrella picture. Government wants your children, and then they want them dead. That's it. And it is that bad, and it is that graphic. And they want you to consent to it without your knowledge, because they know you're busy. That's why government makes mothers busy and tries to tax them and throw them into the workforce and 1,000 other things. This is the point. This is it. So don't send them back, because God only knows what will happen next. Okay, moving on here, jab-related things, just a couple of topics very quickly. First of all, Alex Berenson on his Substack channel, alexberenson.substack.com. Again, I don't know where to come out with these individuals. It's very difficult regarding this whole, what is COVID this, COVID that stuff, that no one's on the same page, which is really unfortunate, because the page can't get clearer as to where we should all be at the exact same time. But this was titled, 10 years ago, microbiologist Ralph Baric told Tony Fauci and the world he would make coronaviruses more lethal. Then, with Fauci's backing, he did. The subtitle is, Baric, who worked hand in glove with the lab in Wuhan, from which SARS-CoV-2 likely leaked, also insisted the government keep its rules on coronaviruses loose so he could tinker with them more easily. Now, the word usage is the part that I have the problem with here, and it will always be, because this word usage is not accurate. Number one, there is no virus. There is no coronavirus. When you hear the term coronavirus, just think poison. Manufactured poison. That's number one. Number two, there was no leak. Like, oops, it just packed its bags and ran out of the room. No, it didn't slip out of a window. It didn't fall into a drain and then work its way into the water system, and then there you have it. I mean, that's possible, because again, it's poison, and we believe it's in the water. Certainly, numerous individuals do. Synthetic snake venom and 1,000 other things. The point is that the word usage is inconsistent, but it is consistently wrong when it comes to these individuals who have massive substacks and are pushing these messages. Ralph Baric, again, along with the approval of Tony Fauci, was playing with poison in North Carolina. First, before, of course, the Wuhan stuff. There were numerous places playing with poison. They weren't playing with a quote-unquote virus. They're not playing around with something that floats around in the air. They're playing around with manufactured poison that they created to make it more contagious via electromagnetism. Not through coughing and sneezing, but just because of electromagnetism and being around one another. And then, of course, you can make it sexually transmitted because it's in the reproductive organs, and it's found in blood and semen and vaginal fluid and 1,000 other things. Well, then yeah, you are making it more contagious. So he's right with the message of what these guys were doing, sort of, but it's far worse than that. They're in the poison manufacturing business, these guys. And then they sell the fairy tale of it being some invisible thing that floats in the air. Then they trick people into wearing masks, and then they trick you into taking a shot that no one can name the ingredients to, certainly not the shot recipients themselves, under the guise of it being a preventative medicine against something that doesn't exist. This is, again, this is the problem with the Alex Berensons of the world and these other individuals. They're half-truths, and sometimes it's a third of the truth mixed in with 2/3 of a lie. It's remarkably unfortunate. Let me give you another example, however, of the wordplay that gets used. This was a study that is in preprint right now, if memory serves. And it was in preprint at the end of March. And this is the March 24th version of this particular study. Here's the title: Persistence of S1 spike protein in CD16 plus monocytes up to 245 days in SARS-CoV-2 negative post-COVID-19 vaccination individuals with post-acute sequelae, if I'm saying that right, of COVID-19 PASC-like symptoms. Now, allow me to translate. What they're saying is they're saying we're seeing the quote-unquote spike protein, which is really the mRNA and the immune response that's heightened as a result of course, poisoning themselves with an injection of a biological weapon. And they're saying that they're seeing this in these individuals who have taken the shots hundreds and hundreds of days after taking the shots. And they're using this as the excuse for why you're seeing quote-unquote long COVID or post-COVID vaccination symptoms, as they call it. This is again the problem with this wordplay. They're complicating it. And in the complication, they're trying to make it sound far more scientific and heady than it actually has to be. The simplest way to explain it is something I've said on this show almost since the show's inception. You're injecting yourself with a biological weapon. You're permanently damaging your DNA. You're cutting off your body's innate ability to get rid of deoxygenized toxic cells in your body and get rid of any toxin that exists in your body that builds up inside of your body instead as a result of not having the appropriate DNA anymore. And then you end up with multiple syndromes because your immune system is now compromised. That's it. It isn't any more complicated than that. This is why the long COVID thing is a lie. That's why long COVID doesn't exist. But all of these scientific publications now are coming out again, telling a third of the truth, and then 2/3 of it is a fairy tale. It's just continuing to perpetuate the fairy tale. Here's another one. This was from back in February. This is from umbrellanews.com.au. So an Australia website, if I'm not mistaken, news outlet. It's titled, "Sick with COVID Again? You could be suffering from immune imprinting." Again, it's a complicated way of saying you have a permanently compromised immune system because of your broken DNA. That's it. Your body can't do what it was normally doing before you injected it with a biological weapon. That's all. And I mean, it's not a that's all like, hey, who cares? Not that big of a deal kind of thing. It's this is how simple this depopulation program is. So anybody trying to complicate it beyond the explanation that I just threw out, they're overcomplicating it. And I'm going to toss out a bit of a criticism here. I respect this individual, and I want to say that first. But I'm throwing out this criticism because this individual writes these overcomplicated medical documents. And I know someone would say, well, maybe, Sean, you're just not smart enough and you can't figure it out. I get it. I mean, I understand what she's writing. But it's Dr. Jessica Rose, okay, a Canadian researcher with a master's degree in immunology and a postdoctoral degree in molecular biology and biochemistry. She's a bright gal, and she can read the documents and look at the numbers, and she can figure out what's happening with these individuals. But for the everyday American who doesn't seem to understand it, you can't bring a Dr. Jessica Rose into a school board and explain to these people what they've done to themselves. It'll go in one ear and out the other. In fact, the truthful message is so simple that even if you brought the simplest message to the brainwashed, they still wouldn't get it. So to simplify Dr. Jessica Rose's Substacks, which are remarkably complicated at face value, even to the layperson, and even again to an individual who knows exactly what's going on. We're not talking about, she even references variants and other people reference variants. There are no variants. They don't exist. There is just a dwindling of one's DNA and immune system, therefore creating multiple syndromes and different kinds of illnesses in numerous different kinds of people. Because again, while we are all the same in many ways, we are also very different depending on your own habits, and your own genetic makeup and the other things that you do in your spare time and whatever else, and any other medications that you take and XYZ. This is why everybody isn't dropping dead like we're all hanging out with Jim Jones. If we were all hanging out at a Jim Jones party and we all drank the same thing, we'd all drop dead in an instant. But this is different because it's hitting people on a more complex level in different ways because, again, we're different. We have different immune systems. We have our DNA is different because of the things that we've done in our spare time, in our extracurricular activities, and our lifestyles, and whatever it may be. And again, the medications that people take. That's why it's having a different impact on everybody. So it doesn't have to, these COVID jab explanations don't have to be these over-the-top molecular, biological, and biochemistry explanations with charts and dots and lines and all this other stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. In fact, my other criticism is that it's in the not simplifying it for people that is perpetuating the problem and kicking the can down the road here. Because now you have this new wave of quote-unquote doctors, and she's not a medical doctor, but again, she's a medical researcher, that she herself, again, knows a great deal of what's going on and sees what's happening inside the human body. But if we don't make it simple for everybody to understand that it really is far more simple than the giant medical documents that they're creating and the things that they're putting out, that's not going to help anybody. So let me actually say this kind of in conclusion, and just to sort of lead up to this weekend's Substack article, which I'll do my best to put out. Let's examine the sexual transmission of the COVID shots themselves. And again, this, of course, being a biological weapon. It's not a vaccine. It is a biological weapon. There is no COVID. There was no pandemic. Now we have certainly some kind of an epidemic regarding weakened immune systems and chronic illness. I think everybody can agree on that to some extent. Certainly a lack of thinking and stupidity is the real pandemic, but either way, brainwashing, among other things. Regarding the sexual transmitted nature of all of this, and even leading up to that, we've all heard of stories, and many individuals know this from firsthand accounts, that when college-age females start living with one another in college environments, whether they be dorm rooms, apartments, or wherever they're living with roommates, that their menstrual cycles will sync up. This is a thing. This happens. That happens not because they cough and sneeze on each other and then all of a sudden their menstrual cycles sync up. They sync up because of electromagnetism. And of course, there are symptoms that come along as a result of an individual, a female in particular, of course, having a menstrual cycle. And when those symptoms of having a hormonal shift inside of the bloodstream via electromagnetism are transferred over to another female, that's of course where the syncing up takes place. If it can happen with a menstrual cycle among females, why on earth doesn't anybody believe, or do people deny, I should say, that the same thing can happen when you inject yourself with something and then you are around people, and then those individuals end up becoming ill or their cellular makeup is disrupted in the same way? Why would someone deny that? Again, one thing directly leads to the other. One thing, there is a clear correlation and a proof of electromagnetism in that event alone, in the syncing up of menstrual cycles. With that aside now, when you have individuals who are jabbed and they are around individuals who are not, there is ample anecdotal, and I hate that word, but there's ample evidence via direct stories that people have told from their own experiences that individuals who are jabbed, and if they are around individuals who are not jabbed, specifically females, that the females themselves, that their menstrual cycles will become more rapid and that their blood flow will be heavier. And they'll even clot. That again, the shedding of the inner lining of their uterus is clotting as it is being expelled from the body. This has been reported widely. Again, not in the mainstream media, Certainly not. And certainly not numerous other places, but this has been discussed, witnessed, and openly talked about. This is a thing. This is happening. So you have disruptions of the reproductive organs in females. Not just, of course, the uterus, but we know that it's happening and that the actual quote-unquote spike proteins or nanotechnology, whatever phrase at this point you want to use, it certainly is the nanotech or the mRNA. And again, I know people have said there is no mRNA in it, it's just flat out nanotechnology. Well, let's assume that it is then. If it's just the nanotech and the self-assembling nanotechnology, it's clustering on the ovaries also. So for someone to deny that it's attacking the reproductive organs of females, that's clearly not true. It most certainly is. Same thing with males. Same exact thing. The testicles have been attacked as a result of the nanotechnology and the jabbed individuals being jabbed. We know that this is the case. Prostate cancer has gone up. The prostate gland is, again, it's a gland, but it's a part of the male reproductive system. So yes, the reproductive organs from both male and female are being attacked. This is a real thing. Why would it be impossible then, or not even probable, that this would be sexually transmitted? Again, finding research articles right now, specifically regarding, again, peer-reviewed, quote-unquote, in medical journals on the reproductive sexual transmission of these shots from person to person are sparse, if not non-existent. But what does exist, which is, again, the red flag, is that there are ample articles directly pointing to the destruction of the reproductive organs. And then, of course, actual reproduction itself and the health of the unborn child and the ability to even, again, give birth, let alone get pregnant. So all of this is out there. And these dots, again, are very close to one another. They're so close, they're worth connecting. They're not necessarily on top of one another, although they certainly seem to be from our perspective. But this is part of it. And this is a very real problem. And this is unfortunately something that people didn't take into consideration nor think about the moment that they started taking these shots. My whole point is that the overcomplication of this is a massive problem. Let's just get down to brass tacks. What is it doing and what is it not doing? Because what it's not doing is preventing something. It's not preventing some illness that is flying around in the air. What is it doing? It's killing people. And it's continuing to do that. And unfortunately, what we're seeing are people overcomplicate this entire story in an order to, control the narrative to some extent. And that's a huge problem. So I'm going to leave it there for now. But again, I hope this weekend to have out another Substack article that kind of describes, again, the sexually transmitted nature of all of this, and certainly the media contradictions that exist from one story to the next. Because when you look at these headlines that I have sort of set up for this article, you'll easily see that over the course of the years, they basically backtrack on their own stories. They'll say, well, in fact, I'll give you this quick little example. This is rather funny / sad. What they actually did was, and even the CDC themselves has done this, is they've openly admitted that the COVID, quote-unquote, pandemic and all of the COVID testing that was taking place, while that was good as far as they were concerned, which of course it was not, but while all of that was taking place, the testing that wasn't taking place was sexually transmitted disease and sexually transmitted infection testing. And now what they're seeing as a result of that lack of testing during the COVID pandemic, quote unquote, they're seeing an uptick in sexual transmission, and they're seeing an uptick in sexual transmitted infections. Well, one thing has nothing to do with the other, or does it? You see, they believe that not testing individuals for sexually transmitted infections or diseases, as they like to say, because they moved the word from disease to infection because they thought disease was too graphic for everybody. Too much of a stigma associated with the word disease, apparently. But either way, they're using that as an excuse as to why now there are more sexually transmitted diseases today than ever before. But what's the real cause? Is it because of the COVID injections? Is it because people don't know that the COVID injections are sexually transmitted? Is it because more and more people are showing the signs that an individual would have a sexually transmitted disease from a physical and biological standpoint and a medical standpoint now? And that either they or their partner were jabbed with the COVID shots. That's their backdoor way of trying to cover up what's actually going on here from a sexually transmitted standpoint. So I'll bring more to that proof in the Substack article, but I'm telling you, I mean, it's just their backdoor way of trying to make excuses and justify what's actually happening. Let's face it, they know what's going on. They just can't tell us. So they have to gaslight people into believing one thing over another. It's their only defense, and it's a poor one. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for listening, and I will catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.